Now, I know that I did just have a question really quick about how to find our admissions counselor. If you want to find out who your admissions counselor is, you can actually go to our admissions website and you can find our counselor finder under the contact page. You just type in your high school and it'll tell you your high school counselor or who your admissions counselor is. That being said, let's go ahead and get started and talk a little bit more about the actual application process. And just an FYI, in case you're not aware, this presentation is actually like a three-parter. So it'll be admissions first, then we're going to have one of our lovely colleagues from the Texas One Stop talk a little bit more about financial aid. And then last but not least, we'll have somebody talk about housing. But first thing, we're going to go ahead and talk about the application process first and how that's going to look like. So first things first, the first thing that we usually like to cover is holistic review, because a lot of times we get a lot of students who ask about, what GPA they need, what test scores they need, what extracurriculars do they need, what can they do to guarantee their admission at UT Austin? And the answer to that is that there really isn't any way that you can guarantee your admission to UT Austin, because a number of different factors are taken into consideration in holistic review, right? Some universities may work on a matrix, right? Where if you have a certain test score and a certain GPA, you're pretty much guaranteed to get into UT or into their programs, but that's not the case here at UT Austin. Again, it's a completely holistic review, right? So of course, our students who are automatically admissible, top 6% of their graduating high school class in Texas, will be automatically admissible to UT Austin, guaranteed admission into the university, but not into their first choice major, right? And again, the important thing to keep in mind is that we do an individualized holistic review. So there's not one thing in the application that we value more than the other, right? So a number of different factors are taken into consideration, right? Including the essays, including all those optional items that you decide to submit, the context of your environment, right? So if your high school pretty competitive, or maybe your high school didn't have as many opportunities to offer you in terms of like AP classes, dual credit, or IB, we take those things into consideration, right? Because a lot of times students tend to get concerned, well, my high school didn't have as many opportunities as the high school down the road, so on and so forth, right? So again, that's why holistic review is in place, so we can take all those different things into consideration, right? Now, there's a couple of different pathways to admission. I've already talked about the first one, which is automatic admission, right? So automatic admission is offered to the top 6% of the graduating class, Texas residents only. And as I mentioned, this guarantees your admission into the university, but not your admission into your first choice major. Everybody else will go through admission by holistic review. Now, keep in mind that everybody goes through holistic review, whether you're automatically admissible or not, right? So everybody's being holistically reviewed, but there are students who are outside of top 6% that will be admitted via holistic review, right? If that makes sense. Now, there are two alternative entry programs into UT Austin. Excuse me. And I do want to mention that these programs are not majors. They're not things that you can apply for. They're not things that you can request. These programs are admission decisions, right? So ultimately, you don't have to worry about it until if you are awarded this particular program, right? So the first program that I want to talk about is the Coordinated Admissions Program, otherwise known as CAP. More than likely, you've probably already heard about CAP. Essentially, what it is that you would begin your studies at a different UT system school. These are basically every UT system school with the exception of UT Dallas and the UT Health Sciences Centers. You'd have to complete 30 credit hours of approved coursework through that UT system school. And after a year, usually, you will be able to go ahead and automatically transfer to UT Austin and be guaranteed admission into only majors within the College of Liberal Arts, with the exception of undeclared liberal arts, Plan 2, and environmental science, right? You will not be guaranteed admission into any other majors besides the ones in liberal arts, right? With the exception of the ones that I just listed. You can apply as a CAP student to another major, but it is not a guarantee. However, if you do decide to apply to another major and you are not granted that major, you will still have that safety net of the liberal arts major. Now, the path to admission through co-enrollment or PACE is similar in the sense that you start your studies somewhere else and you have to complete a certain amount of coursework before transferring over to UT Austin. Typically takes about a year. The main difference here is, of course, this is actually completed through Austin Community College, and you'll be co-enrolled at UT Austin at the same time. So technically, you'll be a UT student because you'll get to take a UT class, one UT class a semester, right? Upon completion of the program requirements, students will be able to automatically transfer into the College of Liberal Arts, Moody College of Communication, the College of Education, and the Steve Hicks School of Social Work. You can only choose a major within those 4 majors. You cannot apply outside of those 4 schools is what I meant to say. And then later on, if you choose to change your major, you are marked as a PACE student. So you will only be able to change your major within those 4 colleges or schools, right? So please keep that in mind. And again, as a reminder, you cannot request these programs. You cannot apply for these programs. These will be admission decisions. Now, I do also want to talk about the document upload system. So a lot of times when students are applying, they are like, well, where am I going to submit my resume? Where do I submit my letters of recommendation? I don't see a spot to put this in. That's where the document upload system comes in. So 24 to 48 hours after you submit your application, you'll be able to submit your resumes and letters of recommendation. And you can also submit any additional documents, such as the ones that are required for your honors program or for any major specific items, right? So this can include essays, this can include resumes, letters of recommendation. This, of course, can also include, if you have a copy of your transcript and you want to upload it, you can do it through the document upload system. If you feel like you made a mistake on your essay or your resume, you can upload a new copy through the document upload system, so on and so forth. This tool is very, very handy. Now, here is the complete application checklist. This is everything that you need to have in order to have a complete application to UT Austin, right? So the $75 application fee or fee waiver if it applies to you, the admissions application itself, so this can be through the Coalition for College or through Apply Texas. We don't have a preference on either or, and there's no major difference besides the fact that Applied Texas only has schools in Texas, while the Coalition for College has schools outside of the state of Texas. We also have an essay and 4 short answer questions. That has changed from the previous years. Previously, we only required 3 short answers. Now we require 4, and short answer 3 is a little bit different this year. We, of course, also require you to submit your high school transcripts, because that's where we'll find your rank, your GPA, your classes, so on and so forth, right? College transcripts, if applicable, but in most cases, your college coursework will already be on your high school transcript. In most cases, you may not need to submit a college transcript, but it's on a case-by-case basis. Excuse me. And any major specific requirements, if applicable, right? So as I kind of like alluded to in the previous slide, there are some majors that may have additional requirements. So there may be, you may have to submit an additional essay, or a resume or letters of recommendation, depending on your program, but not every single major has additional requirements. And you can review if you have any major specific requirements on our website. Now, we do have some optional materials as well. So you are able to submit an expanded resume, which essentially just allows you to go into a little bit more depth and detail on all the extracurricular activities that you've done, right? So the Apply Texas and Coalition for College applications don't give you that much space to talk about your extracurriculars. Your expanded resume does give you that opportunity, and it can be as detailed as you want it to be. We still recommend that you keep it between about 2 to 3 pages or so. But again, this gives you more space and more opportunity to kind of describe all the different things that you did and accomplished, right? Letters of recommendation, these up to 2 letters of recommendation, and these can essentially come from anybody that personally knows you and can speak a little bit more about you beyond from what we already see on your application, right? These should come from somebody, again, that personally knows you, not somebody that's only known you for like a few months, right? The reason I mention this is because students feel like they need to get it from a teacher, and you absolutely can, but sometimes we've had letters of recommendation from student who submit from a student who requested it from a teacher they've only known for maybe like a month or 2, and the teacher can only speak upon, you know, your behavior in their classroom and your grade in their classroom, right? And that doesn't give us like a whole lot of information, right? A teacher that's known you for a couple of years, who's maybe even experienced working with you outside of their own classroom, would be a fantastic fit. It can come from a counselor, it can come from a religious leader, it can come from your employer, a family friend, just as long as they are not related to you, that letter of recommendation is valid, right? Now, of course, I do want to address our standardized testing policy for this year as well. So the test scores, this test score requirement has been suspended for fall 2022 applicants. That means that you do not have to submit your test scores in order to have a complete application to UT Austin, right? So again, keep in mind the whole holistic review process when it comes to how we review applications, because a lot of times students kind of get concerned about whether or not they should be submitting their test scores. They tend to kind of hesitate and like, well, in my situation, should I submit test scores? You know, is it optional but like recommended? It truly is completely up to you. We can't advise you to do one thing or the other. What I will say is that not submitting test scores will not disadvantage you in the review process. Submitting test scores is not going to give you an intrinsic advantage over another student either, because again, we do an individualized holistic review process. Individualized meaning that when we're reading our applications, it's just in the context of your application. We're not comparing you in another application. We're not comparing you to another student who has test scores or who doesn't have test scores, right? So ultimately, it's the test scores allow us to see a little bit more about you, get a little bit more context about your academic background, as well as your test taking abilities. But it's just one factor, and it's not the deciding factor, nor is it weighed heavier than other parts of the application, right? So it's completely up to you if you choose to submit test scores. Even if you already have test scores, you do not have to submit them if you do not want to. Now, as I mentioned earlier, again, major specific requirements. There are some majors that do require extra things. For example, the School of Nursing, the Steve Hicks of Social Work do have additional essay prompts. If you're applying to the music program, they actually have a separate application that they need you to fill out in addition to ours. So again, just make sure that you're going to our website to review all of the major specific requirements and if that's applicable to you. Now, this is our timeline for admissions. August 1st is going to be when our application actually opens up. In addition to that, our housing application will also open up as well. October 1st is the FAFSA and TASFA application opening. More than likely, your counselors will be talking to you a little bit more about that as the time approaches. Of course, we do have a financial aid session coming up here in just a few minutes. November 1st is the priority application deadline. If you apply by this deadline, you will receive your admission decision no later than February 1st, our priority notification. December 1st is our final application deadline. And if you apply by this deadline, you will receive your admission decision no later than March 1st. January 15th is our FAFSA and TASFA priority consideration date. Again, you'll probably get a little bit more information as we go into the financial aid presentation. And then the last date on this timeline is May 1st. That's going to be the last day that you will be able to accept your offer of admission and satisfy your enrollment deposit, right? And so one other thing that I just want to go ahead, or two other things that I want to go ahead and talk about before I move on from the slide, very important here in the bottom, is your housing application, right? We do recommend that you submit it as soon as possible, but of course, we'll get into that a little bit later as we have somebody from housing talk to y'all about that. But again, you want to submit that as soon as possible. And then My Status, you'll gain access to this, which is your portal. You'll gain access to this 24 to 48 hours after you submit your application, right? So I mentioned earlier the document upload system. It'll be on My Status, and on My Status, you'll see what you've already submitted, what's still missing. You'll be able to access your housing application. You'll be able to access your financial aid. You'll be able to access your honors application. There's a lot of important things on My Status is what I'm trying to say. So you want to make sure that you're keeping track of your My Status constantly. In fact, that's actually where your admission decision is going to pop up at the end of the day. So again, just make sure that you're keeping up with this My Status page. Now, just to clarify, the priority deadline offers students the opportunity to receive their admission decision up to a month earlier. However, the priority deadline is non-binding, so it's not early action or early decision. We do not have either of those things here at UT Austin, and it doesn't provide an advantage in the review process. All it does, once again, is it gives you an admission decision a month earlier. No advantage, it's non-binding, so you don't have to commit to us if you're admitted after the priority deadline. Now, we also, of course, if you're interested in any honors programs, it's a pretty simple process in order to apply for them. When you're applying on Apply Texas for Coalition for College, you'll be able to select the honors program that you wish to apply to. Once you have access to your My Status, you'll need to complete and submit any additional requirements for your desired honors program. Now, keep in mind, if you're interested in an honors program, they only offer admission in the fall semesters, not spring or summer, and they have the same deadline as us as December 1st. All right, so now we are going to go ahead and go into financial aid and scholarships. And we do have somebody here from Texas One Stop who will be talking a little bit more about that. So I want to go ahead and hand over the reins to Miss Maria.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Sam. All right, I hope you guys are ready to talk about money. So let's get started. Next slide, please. Okay, so a few types of financial aid we have here at UT Austin are university scholarships, which are all scholarships within the university, private scholarships, or what we call outside scholarships, grants on a federal, state, and institutional level, as well as work study programs, and then loans. Next. Okay, so how do you apply for university scholarships, right? Is probably your first question, is how do I apply for the good stuff? So the good thing is a lot of the scholarships that you can qualify for, you apply for when you apply for admissions. So you just want to make sure you complete that Apply Texas admissions application correctly. And then just monitor your My Status portal for scholarship relevant questions or requirements. Next. Okay, so university scholarships. So there are departmental scholarships is one branch of university scholarships that I want y'all to focus on. Now, when I say departmental scholarships, I mean the scholarships within UT. The scholarships within the UT department that you're applying to, or the college that you're applying to. So like if you're applying to engineering, if that's going to be your major, then you're going to spend some time on the Cockrell School of Engineering site. Business is Macomb. So spend some time on the homepage of the college within UT that you're applying. Next. Now, next, I believe, is a few of our more exclusive scholarships, just to give you guys an example. But don't panic, because these are just some of many scholarships. So first one is the Presidential Scholars. It's about 350 incoming freshmen. It is a $5,000 annual award, and it's a program. So it's not just the money, it's kind of in a community of scholars. Next. So next is the University Leadership Network. It's about 500 incoming freshmen. It is a $5,000 annual scholarship. Unlike other scholarships, I believe this one is something that comes to students in a monthly check, which is really great. And again, it's that community program. So it's university service, leadership training, networking opportunities. It's really cool. Next. I believe the last one is Impact Scholars. So pretty exclusive. It's only about 30 new Longhorns. But it's over the 4 years that you're here, it's about $12,000 per year. So definitely feel free to Google these on our sites, check them out, but know that there's plenty other funding opportunities going on. Next. Okay, so I'm sure plenty of you have heard rumors of free tuition here at UT. Well, that's on the right track. That's not exactly what it is, but they're not rumors, it's true. So we have something called Texas Advanced Commitment. It is a program for if you qualify for it, then your tuition will be covered, because we do not want finances to come between you and you earning your degree. So the good thing is there's no separate application for this. All you have to do is the FAFSA or the TAFSA, which I'll get into in a little bit. Just know that it is a program and a commitment that is going on here. It's our commitment to our students. Next, please, Sam. Okay, private scholarships, super important. There's a lot of different layers here, so make sure you pay attention. So one of our bigger donors, and again, remember private scholarships are also referred to as outside scholarships because they're coming either from outside donors or like a UT adjacent donors. So private scholarships, one of our biggest donors are the Texas Exes. They are our alumni association. They are known for the 40 Acres Scholarship Program. So definitely check out their website. You will occasionally see things on your application page that say My Status, or I'm sorry, you will, excuse me, you will occasionally see things on your My Status page related to 40 Acres or Texas Exes. So make sure you're monitoring My Status, but also check out their website. The next slide talks about the Terry Foundation. Now, the Terry Foundation is more nomination-based than application-based, but still definitely check out their website. Next, please. Okay, this is my favorite part. Probably one of the favorite parts of my job is how many scholarship checks I see come across my desk that are from places that I would have never heard of in Texas. And the point is that you should check your local community for funding opportunities. I see so many checks come from like places of worship or parents' place of employment or local Rotary clubs or Girl Scout troops and Boy Scout troops. So think outside the box within your local community because there's funding to be had there. Next, please. Now, another great place to search for outside scholarships or private scholarships is the internet. Just be careful because there are scams out there. So the few websites that you see here are great places to start for outside scholarships. FastWeb is my personal favorite because it's so user-friendly. Next. Okay, my roots as a financial aid counselor cannot stress this part enough. The FAFSA. So the FAFSA stands for the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. Every year it opens on October 1st and you can submit it on a rolling basis. So by that, I mean, we accept it on a rolling basis and you can submit it whenever you want, but the priority deadline in Texas is January 15th. So please try and get it done by then. So mark your calendars. Every year, FAFSA comes out on October 1st. Start filling it out then and definitely try and submit it before the January 15th deadline. Now, if you can't do the FAFSA, there's the TAFSA. Thank you, Sam. The TAFSA stands for the Texas Application for State Financial Aid. A great place to start for the TAFSA is College for All Texans. But again, like the FAFSA, opens on October 1st, please get it in by January 15th, because that way we can prioritize you for financial aid, hence the phrase priority deadline. Do not do both. Do the FAFSA or the TAFSA, not both. Next, please. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about need-based financial aid on a federal, state, and institutional level. So on a federal level this is kind of Department of Education money, is the federal Pell Grant. It's been around for a while. It is a grant. Grant is technically free money. Grants you do not have to pay back. Work study is a federal need-based award. It is part-time employment on campus. Some of the coworkers that I have, my fellow full-time employees, they started out as work studies. So it really kind of gets you places. Work study is very near and dear to my heart. Then there's loans. So direct federal student loans are loans in the student's name for the student's education. Parent Plus loans are in the parent's name, but still for the student's education. So just keep in mind that if you get Parent Plus loan, it's a conversation that you have to have with your parents if they want to have that loan in their name. Next. So Texas Grant and Texas Public Education Grant. These are two types of need-based grants within the state of Texas. Again, no set-foot application. All you need to do is the FAFSA or TAFSA. Funding is limited, so emphasis on that January 15th priority deadline. Next, UT Austin grants. There are so many little buckets of money at UT Austin that make up a variety of grants. So, and we're always going to try and award you with as much of these grants as we can. It's just up to you to get that FAFSA or TAFSA in sooner rather than later, and definitely before the priority deadline, which is, again, January 15th. Next. Okay, private student loans. This is what we call the last resort of financial aid. Now, the reason we say that is because we want it to be your last resort of financial aid. Private student loans are when you go out to a bank or a lender and you seek out a loan to fund your education yourself. It normally involves high interest rates, credit approvals, and just a lot of research. If you want to do it, we are here to assist you with the process. We just advise that you use all other options first because of the high interest rates and the credit approval and things like that. Next, exemptions and waivers. So these are kind of a niche part of the financial aid world. These are things you qualify for or you don't. So on this page, you'll see a link. It's the catalog for the tuition exemptions and waivers. Take some time, browse through it. If you think you qualify for it, follow the directions on how to apply for it. But other than that, don't spend too much time on this page because again, these are things you qualify for or you don't, like the valedictorian exemption or the Hazelwood Act exemption. I'd rather you spend most of your time looking for outside scholarships or departmental scholarships. All right, and next slide. Okay, when will you hear about your financial aid? So I know I'm hounding you to get your financial or get your FAFSA or TAFSA in by January 15th. However, we normally package students in mid-March or mid-April. So just know that even though you're getting your FAFSA and TAFSA in early, we'll package you around March or April, and it'll come to you in the form of a financial aid notification, which will prompt an email. So when it comes to mid-March, mid-April, just make sure you're monitoring your email or your cash page, which you'll get more information about later. But yeah, next slide, please. I believe I'm handing it over to housing now. So thank you guys for your time. I'm going to do my best to monitor your questions in the chat.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mel, and I am the manager for contracts and assignments here with the University Housing and Dining. I'm here to talk to you today about living on campus in our residence halls. So there is no live-on requirement for our first-time freshmen to live in the residence halls. Next. But why should you live on campus in our residence halls? First, we're close to all of your classes. So depending on where you're at and where your classes are, there are residence halls close by. And if you live in a residence hall on the other side of campus, there is a UT shuttle that takes you all the way around campus. Next is safety. So all of our buildings have swipe card access, and only residents living in those buildings have access to those living areas. Our front desks are also staffed, and we have 24-hour front desks and night staff as well. We have resident assistants and complex coordinators that are live-on staff here to assist you. Resident assistants are student staff that are here serving in on-call rotations and here for your questions, concerns, and just your living experience. Complex coordinators are master's level professional students, professional staff, full-time staff that live on in the complex that you're in. Next is our academic initiatives and our living learning communities. So with these living learning communities, these are residential communities within some of our residence halls that are based on different interests or academic areas for our students. So if you apply to live with us and receive a contract and you have submitted interest in any of these communities, if you are accepted into the LLC, you'll be living with students that share similar interests to you, such as our E3 Living Learning Community, which is for equal opportunity and engineering program with the Cockrell School of Engineering, our First Generation Living Learning Community, our Global Living Learning Community with Texas Global, our Transfer Living Learning Community. The list goes on. Check out our website for the full list of our LLCs. With engagement and networking. So we do have our residential curriculum that is really based off of student learning outside of the classroom and in the residence halls. With our learning goals, our 3 learning goals are to use appropriate self-management strategies, engage in community together, and to demonstrate cultural competency. So everything we do within the residence halls is based on that engagement. Graduation rates and retention rates. So students that live on with us you're more likely to achieve a higher GPA, balance your priorities and your commitments, and it enhances your ability to solve problems. Finally, with leadership positions, we do have built-in leadership positions. Students can get involved with the University Residence Hall Association, Residence Hall Council, go on to become RAs, or participate in our Longhorns for a Culturally Competent Campus program. Next. So our application process. Once you have completed your UT admissions application and you have been accepted, you are eligible to receive a contract. So apply online for housing as soon as you know that you are going to be wanting to be coming to UT Austin. There is a $50 application fee, and that is going to be non-refundable. While there is no specific deadline to apply, Our housing application date does set that room selection priority. What that means is the sooner you apply, the more likely you will be able to select a room when we open our room selection process. We will go in the order that we receive applications from our first-time freshmen in order to let you select a space. Housing contracts will be offered starting March 1st. So remember that deadline. You'll want to apply as soon as you know that you're able to live here, able to come to school here. Thank you. Next. So our basic room and board rate for this year is that $12,645 option. You can see our full list of rates and billing if you go to the housing.utexas.edu website, click on future residents, and look under rates and billing. We have a wide range of different types of rooms within our residence halls. That one specifically is for the shared space with a community bath. What does the room rate cover? This includes all utilities, cable and internet. Laundry is included for the academic year. What is also included is the unlimited meal plan. So the meal plan allows residents unlimited visits at all of our dining halls. It gives you $300 in dine-in dollars per semester, which can be spent in our operated locations. And it also gives you $200 in Bevo Pay funds, which can be used at any of the participating locations around campus. So our next year's rates are not posted yet, but they are likely to be posted in the spring of 2022. If you are choosing to live off campus, we do have commuter meal plans available, and Bevo Pay is always available to students living off campus. Next. So again, just to look at that timeline, application for admission opens August 1st. Housing actually opens the first Monday in August. So for this year, that application is going to open August 2nd.
All right. Well, thank you so much for that information. That was really great. And just to go back on the timeline once again, I just want to go ahead and give y'all a reminder of you know, our whole timeline. Again, August 1st, our admissions application is going to be opening up, and as Mel mentioned, the housing application will also be opening up as well. So obviously, just wanted to say, just because it's opening up on August 1st, don't feel compelled that you got to do it like as soon as possible and get it in as quickly as possible. You do have until November 1st and December 1st to submit that application. And I do encourage folks to take their time and really put in a lot of effort into those applications, a lot of effort and thought. Right. And so that being said, that brings us pretty much to the end of the presentation. Right here, you can see all of our contact information for the Office of Admissions, for Texas One Stop and University Housing and Dining. So if your questions are not answered here today, please feel free to reach out to us over in these emails. And as I mentioned earlier, if you are a student in Texas, you will obviously have an assigned admissions counselor. So please visit our website at admissions.utexas.edu. Go to our contact page and you'll be able to use our counselor finder feature, where you just type in your high school and you'll be able to find your admissions counselor. As I mentioned earlier, I work with students in East San Antonio and Bastrop ISD. So if you fall within those territories, and please feel free to connect with me. And another thing I also want to say is to please go ahead and connect with us on social media. I know that sounds super cheesy, but we do post some really, really great information on there. We obviously have student spotlights. We put up deadline reminders. Sometimes we post some tips and tricks when it comes to like resume writing or essay writing, so on and so forth. Lots of great information on our social media pages. But we do have a couple of more minutes. So if there are any additional questions that need to be answered, please feel free to drop them there in the chat. and then we will all be more than happy to answer some of your questions.
So a couple of you asked for my email, so you can contact us. We can throw that contact page back up, or I can just post on the Texas One Stop contact page in the chat really quick. But I just want to let y'all know that if you have financial aid related questions, it's going to be the Texas One Stop. We have a live chat. You can call us, you can come in, you can email us, you can send a courier pigeon. We have plenty of ways you can reach us. So I'm just going to throw that in the chat right now. So just hang tight. I see another question as I'm kind of getting that Texas One Stop information. Another question is it better to do the FAFSA or the TAFSA? It does not matter, either one works. Please do the FAFSA if you're a US citizen. If you're just a Texas resident, then just do the TAFSA. Please do not do both, do one or the other. Also, I see some of my colleagues are answering all these questions, so much appreciated.
So Savannah, to answer your question, I'll be a senior in high school this year. When should I apply for fall of 2022? That would be this application cycle. So anybody who is still wondering, when do I begin the application process, is going to be the August of your senior year. So if you are going to be a senior this upcoming fall, then this is the application cycle that you want to apply to. And again, our application is going to open up on August 1st. So that is the earliest that you can apply to UT Austin.
Is it okay to ask over the phone?
Sure. We usually like to do things through chat, just so that not a whole lot of like people are talking at the same time, but please feel free to ask your question.
Did type it in, but I think I didn't put it for everybody. So if I needed to, my school directly sends the transcripts. So if my school is sending it, can they send it, or do I have to take it from there and upload it?
No, so your school can send it directly to us. They should have some sort of system to where they can just go ahead and directly send it to us. I did mention that if you just happen to have an official transcript on with you, you can upload it. But in most cases, the school usually sends it to us directly.
And just from my timing perspective, before I apply, or that has to be after I apply?
We typically recommend that you do it after you submit your application. If you do it beforehand, we'll still have it on file, but it may create duplicate files, which it's an easy fix, but it may cause some complications in the future. And you may kind of be like, oh, well, I already turned in my transcript. Why is it not, in? But that's why I usually advise folks to go ahead and submit anything after they apply, because it just makes things a lot easier for everyone. And I'm getting a couple of questions privately. Please make sure that you send them in the everyone chat, because there's other students. One, there's other students who may have a similar question. And two, because a lot of times if it's privately, I may miss it. So I just want to go ahead and try to answer some of these questions. So the first question that we have, is it possible to apply to more than one college within UT? Can I apply to the Jackson School of Geosciences and Cockrell School of Engineering? So technically, yes and no. It really depends on your situation. Because if you're a non-automatically admissible student, you'll only be considered for your first choice major. If you are an automatically admissible student, you'll be considered for your first and second choice major. But please keep in mind that when it comes to second choice majors, a lot of times students don't end up getting those either, because your second choice was somebody else's first choice, right? But ultimately, the main goal is that you will be reviewed for your first choice major. So you want to make sure that you are putting your first choice major as the major that you want the most. If later on your desire is to double major or whatever it is, you absolutely can in the future add another major, usually about after your first year. And there's a complete process that goes with that, but you'll have to talk to your academic advisor when it comes to that. Jason asks, will SAT scores be considered? And if yes, will you consider super scores? As I mentioned earlier, is completely, the requirement is suspended, but you can still submit them. They will still be reviewed if you want. but we do not super score. You can submit multiple scores, but we will use the score that benefits your application the most. Is there a minimum GPA rank that is needed to get into UT Austin? As I mentioned earlier, when it comes to holistic review, because of that, we don't have a minimum GPA requirement or ranking for that. What is different for the automatic admissions process compared to the regular one? It's basically still the same process. The only thing is that if you're automatically admissible, you're obviously guaranteed a spot to the university, but we still highly encourage you. And in fact, we are telling you to please put in effort to your applications because you're still being reviewed for your major, right? Some students end up leaving that stuff blank and then they're wondering why they didn't get their first choice major. So please, please, please still do fill out everything. It's basically the same process other than the fact that you're guaranteed a spot at the university. Did I go to the university? I did not go to UT Austin. I don't know if any of my other colleagues did, if they want to speak on their experience, but I personally did not. How do we decide what dorms we are in? Is it open based on when you accept your letter of acceptance, or is it in another order? I don't know if somebody's already answered that. It's basically, so you can put in your, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but the earlier you apply, the more likely you are to have your preferences met. You can essentially live in any dorm that is accessible to you. They're not separated by like major or anything like that. There are 2 all-female, 1 all-male dorms. So keep that in mind. But other than that, I mean, basically you can live wherever it is that you want. You said the housing applications open up on the 2nd. Is that for people who have already gained admission to UT Austin? So no, that's basically for anybody. And as mentioned earlier, we usually recommend that students submit their housing application even before they receive their decision. It's a non-binding application, so you don't have to commit to housing if you choose not to come to UT, or if you choose not to live on campus, you can absolutely like back out of that. The housing application will basically only just put your name in line for that. And I already answered that. No minimum GPA rank. See, I should start scrolling down more because some of y'all are, my colleagues are actually answering the questions. Yes, does UT Austin consider both the weighted and unweighted GPA? I believe we consider whatever's on your transcript. We don't have like a preference on either or. Veronica, thanks for plugging the podcast. Okay. All right, let me go back up. So if your school does not rank, that's fine. There are some cases where there are schools who do not rank, but do rank their top 10. In that case, you'll want to absolutely talk to your counselor. They'll usually like send us a letter telling us who their top 10 are. But if your school does not rank, then obviously you won't qualify for automatic admission, but you'll still be, I mean, you can still apply, right? The rank that we consider is the one calculated after junior year, because we usually stop, we only review the grades up until the junior year. The Zoom, the recording will actually not be posted somewhere. I believe you may be able to request it, but I'm not 100% sure on that. So somebody can correct me with that if I'm wrong.
Hello. We'll send out the videos to participants next week.
Awesome. Thanks, Veronica. I'm never sure on that one.
Oops, sorry to interrupt. Somebody asked, do we need to submit the FAFSA every year? Yes, the FAFSA or TAFSA does need to be submitted every year. It's something that you'll do kind of on a regular basis, not a regular basis, but an annual basis during your 4 years here. So every year it'll come out on October 1st, and that's kind of your reminder to do it. But yes, it does need to be submitted every year. Great questions, y'all, great questions.
I'm sorry I'm missing some of y'all's questions because y'all are really on it. Let's see if I can, I'm trying to kind of answer some of these as best as I can, because y'all have a lot of questions. But again, if your questions are not answered today, do not fret. Again, please feel free to contact us later on, and we'd be more than happy to answer some of your questions. So I know I had a question earlier that what is the smartest thing to do if we're not sure what we would like to major in? You know, that is completely valid. We don't expect you to have it all figured out right now. It is definitely something to think about. One of the things that I always like to tell students to do is go to our webpage called Wayfinder. And on there, you'll actually be able to take a look at every single major and see like what kind of careers that those majors typically pursue. But another important thing to keep in mind is that major doesn't always equal, or the degree doesn't always equal the career, right? As I mentioned earlier, I'm a business major and I'm working in higher education. Something you would probably not expect. You'd probably expect me to be working in like corporate or something like that, but I'm not doing that. So, so keep that in mind, but also know that always just when it comes to like choosing your major, pick the one that interests you the most, but know that there's going to be opportunities for you to change your major. Obviously that experience will look a little bit different for everyone, because some majors do require certain prerequisite courses or a certain GPA or whatever, because they have an internal transfer process, right? Some majors may be easier to switch into than others, but just know that a lot of people end up changing their minds anyways throughout college. So yeah, and we have a lot of resources and people to help you figure that out as well here at the university. I believe somebody had already asked that, but just wanted to, kind of like reemphasize the fact that if you apply to an honors program and if you're not admitted into that honors program, you will still be considered for your major that you requested, right? That of course includes like McCombs, right? Let's see, If you're not in top 6% when you apply, but later you get into top 6% high school class, I believe you may be able to submit some sort of appeal, and there's a chance you may be considered as top 6%. But just keep in mind that when it comes to ranking, we initially are looking at like your junior ranking. What are other activities I can join in my school community to help stand out in my application? Again, we really love to see involvement in extracurricular activities, but we don't have a set, specific like list of activities you should get involved with. It always helps to, of course, get involved in activities that are related to the major that you are interested in. But just anything that you're passionate about and interested in is always a great thing. So the time is now 1:20, and I know that there were a lot of questions that I did not get to, and I sincerely apologize for that, but we do actually have to get ready to go into the next session. But I, of course, just want to thank y'all for your time, being here and taking in this information, giving us the time to tell you a little bit more about UT Austin and what we have to offer. But once again, I'm just going to go ahead and put this contact page up really quick. Again, if your questions were not answered today, again, I apologize, there was just a lot of questions, but please feel free to reach out to us over at the Office of Admissions, Texas One Stop, University Housing and Dining, and we would be more than happy to answer your questions. But that being said, I'm gonna close out this here in just a second. Thank you once again for coming. Please take down our contact information, and we hope you have a great rest of your day and you enjoy the rest of Texas Preview. Welcome, Horns.
When is the housing application due?
There's not a deadline for the housing application. It's literally as soon as you complete your application for admissions, you have the ability to apply for housing. Housing's first come, first serve. So if housing fills up and you didn't apply and you're admitted, then you don't get to live on campus. That typically doesn't happen. And if it did happen, it wouldn't fill up until about April. So I would say get your housing application in by no later than like January, February.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks y'all. Have a great day and hook 'em horns.